Hey there everyone, welcome back to more Kerbal Space Program Realism Overhaul. So we're starting off with a Cloudtracer 2 launch, another early film television camera. This time we just have to go a little bit more downrange. So this is the second Cloudtracer launch and it will end in, well, the vehicle works fine, but re-entry was hotter than anticipated because we went a lot faster than I thought we'd go, and I didn't plan for it. So my fix was, you will see it now, I essentially took I took a structural tank and I put it in front of the avionics unit, which is what needs to not blow up to have everything work, because that's also protecting the early film television camera. So I added that structural unit in front of it and I used crash to see if it would work, and it did. However, in the actual launch, we had to quick save and quick load a bunch of times because it wouldn't work, even though in the simulation it did. And I pretty much count the simulation as actually working unless there's a test light problem. So that's why I let myself quick save and quick load there. As you can see, it'll work right now, because most of the time it's just a problem with time warp. That's why it doesn't work. So that's Cloudtracer 3. I hope I changed the name for it. Yes, I did. And after we finish this contract, we will complete the downrange development contract, after which we will accept the orbital contract, get a lot of money in advance, and then hopefully complete them in time successfully. A rather picturesque launch with dusk being the setting. And let the quick saving and quick loading begin. I think this is the final attempt at this. No, the next one probably will be, if my memory serves me right. It's completely failing me right now. And yep, there it is. We survived re-entry as we should have. We will slowly tumble down and recover the early film television camera, completing the contract. Hence moving on to downrange 3,000 kilometers and thus orbital rocket development. So the agency decided not to document the launch of a 3,000 kilometer downrange, essentially missile, because that may lead to political tensions and exposition of our progress to potential competitors. However, the agency did decide that it would be apt to document the process of designing and building our first orbital rocket design, and that is what we are seeing right now. So I did things differently this time. Usually I'd have a fairing. It's not worth the delta V loss, and I realized it significantly increased the build time, so we skipped out on the fairing for this one, at least for the main payload. We just put the Sputnik on top and then launched it. It's relatively aerodynamic anyway, so it wasn't a problem. So for the upper stage, we're using an AG10 early, just the first one we unlock. It's extremely unreliable, foreshadowing. And for the first stage, we're using the RD-103M. It's the only one that has the rated burn time to help us to get us to orbit. Now, I would have loved to have done it with just the core stage and the upper stage, but we were short of 200 to 300 meters per second of delta V, and I did not invest in solid rocket propellant. Okay, no, we used the LR-79. Never mind. Not the RD-103M, the LR-79. And so this core stage configuration, I'd end up naming it the Icarus. So effectively, anything that has a core stage like this will be called Icarus. So now we add two smaller boosters. Those have the RD-103Ms. This is a weird bug. I hope they fix it. Pretty generic looking rocket. Not going for anything too fancy here. Pretty ugly as well. So the naming moniker here is we have the core stage name, and then we have the engines used on the boosters, those names. Quickly paint everything. It's just gonna be white and orange. I think I make the side boosters black, yeah. Now we'll be focusing on our first human crewed launch. It's gonna be very simple. We start developing a rocket, but I realize it's just not worth it. So we just stick it on top, stick the Conic X1 on top of a cloud piercer and call it a day. Although I do discover my love for this black steel color. Essentially, we tested it out and it didn't work very well. Plus, the tooling costs would have been unnecessary expense. So we call it the Cloud Piercer C, which is crew, and I just put crew there anyway. So here we are at the pad for our first orbital launch. Main engine ignition. Side boosters also ignited successfully. Test flight is not playing games. yet. Successful booster separation. Now, the reason why I didn't just make it bigger was because the launch pad has a 60-ton limit and we had to be under it. Coming up now on MECO and stage separation, successful light of the upper stage engine, which is hot staged. However, we see performance loss on the AJ1037s, and so the first launch is unable to make it into orbit. Do note it is currently 1956 September. Fortunately, unfortunately, we will slowly watch as Sputnik goes downrange about 2,000 kilometers and then burns up in Earth's atmosphere. Moving on to the second launch, do note the date, 1957 April 28th. Successful ignition, all engines lit. Successful booster separation. Guidance is nominal. Everything's performing nominally is an everyday astronaut thing. Coming up on MECO and hot stage, successful light of the upper stage AJ1037. If this launch does not go to plan, we'll be on our last leg. Looks like we have thrust loss, but that is not mission critical at this point. However, we have complete guidance failure, and then a permanent shutdown on the AJ1037 with 300 meters a second of delta V left, just around 100 meters a second shy of orbit. The agency puts that on guidance failure. And yet again, we watch it burn up in the Earth's atmosphere over what I believe to be is Africa. And so the agency decides that this is not functioning and something must be done. So we take the avionics units and we switch to the next generation avionics units, which luckily were in research and development during the first two launches, and they finished during them. So this allowed us to save a significant amount of mass, increasing our delta V from 9,000 to 9,200. And the idea was we let the AJ10 burn for less amount of time to achieve the same orbit in order to reduce the chances of failure. This third launch would have been our last, since the agency is not comfortable going below 100,000 in budget. Furthermore, the contract would expire. Hesitantly, we put it into production and roll it out to the launch site. Do note the date is 7th December 1957, very close to the original Sputnik date. Successful light of all three main engines. Successful booster SEP and quite a spectacular show over there. LR-79 performing nominally. Very clean, very successful gravity turn thanks to MechChub. And coming up on MECO, successful hot staging and successful second stage separation. Everything's performing nominally. The upper stage and the Sputnik did acquire a bit of a spin, however that is alright. And for the first time the agency achieves successful orbit around the Earth. At this point, massive celebrations and massive applause erupted at Mission Control. And the contract was successfully completed. That ends off this episode. Hope you enjoyed.